Welcome, everybody, to our Search Mastery Speaker Series event today. We have a lot of regular attendees, and people who have come before know that we explore the foundations and practice of search, including skills education and literacy. And today we're really, really excited to have Frank Vitovitch, Vice President of Solutions Consulting at Botify, who's going to talk to us about search visibility and AI search answers. And if you're anything like me, when you starting to use the AI powered tools, you wonder how does that information and that content get into those answers. And that's one of the things that Frank's going to talk to us about today. Frank's a digital marketing and sales professional with 20 years plus of experience in search marketing, software as a service sales, customer success, and professional services. A graduate of Drexel University, Frank has built and managed teams in both pre and post sales organizations at global media agencies, including Group M, Mindshare, and LSF Interactive. He's also held roles at fast-growing search companies such as BrightEdge before joining Botify and helping build the global team over the past 6 years. For better or worse, for him, I guess, he's an avid Notre Dame fan, and he's hosted a weekly podcast titled Single High on uhnd.com, a website he's owned and operated with a friend for 25 years. So thank you so much, Frank, for being here. We're really looking forward to hearing your extensive knowledge in the subject area of AI, of search and AI powered search. So I will turn things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. And happy to be here. And I will say it's been for better as being a Notre Dame fan, maybe over the last 5, 6 years versus the majority of my adult life when it was not as fun to be a Notre Dame football fan. But now happy to be here and talk about AI search, what Botify, the company I work for, is kind of seeing in the market right now. We were even just kind of chatting, in the lead up to this of just it's a very transformational time in search, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of be at the forefront of that. So we have a deck prepared for today, but feel free to fire away with questions either I guess through the chat, I guess is how we want to do it along the way, because there should be plenty of time at the end to kind of dive deep into into any of the topics that we cover. With that, let me jump into our presentation. All right, so hopefully you all are seeing my slides and not my slides and the presenter notes as we go through, but let's start going through. All right, awesome. So thank you for the introduction, already, but yeah, Frank Vitovitch, Global VP of Solutions here at Botify. I've been in the SEO space for over 20 years now. And I think, what's been really fascinating and interesting is the amount of evolution in search over the last 2 years has probably rivaled all of the evolution that I had seen in search in the previous 18 plus years that I had been in the space. As much as everybody, I think, in SEO had kind of always talked about how challenging SEO was in terms of the ever-changing algorithm from Google and all the other search engines, that is, seems, slow and steady in comparison to what we've seen over the last 18 to 24 months with the emergence of ChatGPT, other LLMs, and other new, AI answer engines that consumers are using to try to find products on the internet. At Botify, which is where I've worked now, I think actually you need to update my bio. I've now been here almost 9 years, but what we have been doing since 2010. Since the inception of our company is trying to give all of our brands the power that we work with, the power to be found everywhere, whether they be by consumers, bots, or now AI agents. So our roots are were in technical SEO. We were formed about 15 years ago, at this point. But what we've really started to see again over the last 18 to 24 months is this kind of a shift more away from some of the traditional search engines that our clients are focusing on, more towards these new and emerging players in the space. So I would say our niche is really with a lot of retail brands. So these are some of the logo or some of the brands that we are working with. So some of the largest, retail and e-commerce brands, in the world are the kind of clients that we are working with. So we get to see a lot of really kind of cutting edge things that are happening, in search, and get to have a pretty good understanding of what a lot of the biggest brands are trying to solve for, right now. And what we're seeing, kind of as we are kind of diving in here, is that obviously the agentic momentum is, very real. So these are just some stats to kind of put into context the growth within usage of ChatGPT. So we saw by April of last year already, ChatGPT had reached 800 million, weekly active users. That data is now almost a year old. So that data has even increased, more. Or sorry, that number has increased more over time. A lot of these ones, maybe ones that a lot of these statistics, maybe ones that have seen before. But I think one of the really interesting ones that stands out to me is the 2.5 billion users that are asking questions the 2.5 billion questions that are being asked to ChatGPT on a daily basis, because it's really started to change user behavior in a tangible way. So there hasn't been 2.5 billion, brand new questions in addition to everything that has happened, in a traditional search engine, uh, that had already been in place at Google and Bing. It's really just kind of changed where those questions, are being asked. And what we are seeing, kind of throughout, and this is based off of data, that we have collected, from our largest, retail clients. But the purple line that you're seeing is just the total query volume, which is a combination of questions, users are asking into ChatGPT, as well as, searches that they are doing into traditional search engines. What we started to see in 2025 was that clicks became much, much harder for brands to obtain. So actually getting the end user, once they have their answer, once they found the pair of running shoes that they're searching for, or the new coffee pot that they're trying to replace, once they found that, getting that click has started to become harder and harder, even though the amount of questions that consumers are asking has, steadily been increasing. It's easier and easier to be able to, to ask a question, whether it's to ChatGPT or, Google AI mode, and really kind of get ingrained into, a lengthy conversation. We'll get into how user behavior has really started to, to change in some future slides. But what this is taking us to, in terms of what brands are facing, is there's going to be kind of this point somewhere, in the future where, what is being referred to in the industry as a zero click world, where, you might do all of your interactions in ChatGPT or in Google. You might even then purchase through one of those, through one of those channels, without ever actually going to a .com website like we had in the past. I think everybody kind of became very used to the behavior of, I go to Google, I'm searching for a new pair of running shoes. Maybe I do 30 searches. And I go to 30 different websites and I collect all my data, and then I decide which pair is perfect for me. That entire interaction has now changed, where you might go into ChatGPT, you might ask it 20 or 30 questions, all within the ChatGPT interface. It might present you with 5 or 6 running shoe options at the end that match the needs of exactly what you're looking for. And then in some cases, you could purchase directly from ChatGPT already. Or what we're starting to see now is user behavior hasn't kind of gotten to the point yet where too many individuals are really comfortable with making that transaction directly through ChatGPT. They might then go to the brand.com website, or to Amazon or some other marketplace to be able to to make that purchase. But in the past, that brand might have gotten 5, 6, 7 clicks to its website before the transaction happened, and we're starting to see that become a much harder, I would say, a much greater challenge for brands to be able to measure, how that user activity before the end conversion. At the same time that clicks from users are becoming harder and harder to come by, and brands might see, a very common question that we're getting from, new clients and new prospects that we're talking to on a daily basis is, my traffic is down 10% in terms of clicks, but my revenue isn't. Is this bad? I don't know. This is a new world. We don't know how to measure. There aren't great benchmarks right now because of how fast things are moving. So while that is becoming more and more, commonplace, what's also happening at the same time is bot activity, whether it be from search crawlers or AI bots who are now crawling their website. And these are bots that didn't exist, 4 or 5 years ago. We're seeing that activity skyrocket. We just put this data out, recently, that by the end of 2025, we saw a 4.5x increase in the amount of bot activity to our clients' websites, specifically from AI bots from the beginning of the year to the end. We re-pulled these numbers actually through the end of January, and it's only gone up, even more. But now the challenge that this is creating for a lot of brands is, okay, clicks are harder to come by. I'm having a hard time measuring this. Meanwhile, all these new bots are hammering my site, and it is putting a strain on my infrastructure, which at some point there will be a bill to pay, for a lot of these brands, because now all of this extra bot activity is consuming resources, on their server. And these statistics on the right, I think, really kind of hammer home just kind of the difficulty in understanding right now, at least, how important, is it to even be shown in ChatGPT? Because right now, what we can see across our data is that for every 3 pages that Google crawls on a large enterprise, e-commerce website, it sends one visit, one, actual user to the website, which is not the greatest of ratios when you think about it. Google's still consuming 3 times as much, as the traffic that they're sending, to the .com. Bing even more so, 34 to 1, but that's kind of always kind of been about the ratio we've seen between Bing and Google, given Google's had 90+% market share for so long. OpenAI, however, is crawling 164 pages for every single visit that they're actually sending to to a brand's website. And that is why we've actually spoken to brands over the last, 18 months that have said, I'm not seeing the traffic. I'm getting all of these requests from ChatGPT. We're just going to block it. And we've had some, a lot of discussions with clients like that who are trying to understand, is this bot traffic even worth it, at the end of the day? And the reason for this, which we'll get into, is the way in which all of these LLMs are finding content is just very inherently different than a lot of the search bots, and how that interaction has historically taken place. So with all of this, we're seeing, like I said, the customer journey is rapidly, changing. A lot of the consumer no longer has to put in as much effort into discovery, comparison, and even purchasing as it has done, in the past. But this is what's kind of leading us to that zero-click world that I mentioned, a few slides back. And that is the struggle, like I said, that a lot of brands are having is, a lot of the key metrics that they've used in the past that they've become comfortable with are not nearly as meaningful as they once were, which means they don't have the year-over-year comps that they've grown accustomed to, or the year-over-year benchmarking data that maybe they've used in the past to understand, what is good versus not. And I think this really kind of illustrates what I had mentioned earlier of how AI has really compressed the journey to be much more fewer touch points, across, say, a customer's, purchasing decision. In the past, you had to have all of these different steps, or you had to go through all these different, kind of websites or pages to be able to find, what it was, that you had been looking for. From an SEO perspective, you needed content to match each of those steps, to be able to have, say, different buying guides and things like that along the way, to be able to support all of those different, searches that, that customers were having. In this new world, however, we're kind of moving away from, the idea of, searching, or, keywords, so to speak, and what we would think about as rankings in the search space. I think that's been a metric that people in the SEO space and even on the brand side have become very accustomed to, right? Like, how do I rank for, if you're going back to our running shoes example, how do I rank for, for men's running shoes, women's running shoes, or, running shoes for a half marathon, right? Whatever the all of the different variations would be. It was very simple. It was usually 3-4 words were made up a keyword in the past. So measurement became kind of easy, right? It was pretty easy to understand exactly how you rank in Google and Bing and the other search engines that that you cared about. However, now users are starting to become much more comfortable entering in full-on questions and having conversations. And that has changed some of the metrics that that are really valid, I would say, in 2026. So keyword rankings will still be a place. We still see across our data right now that more than 90% of clicks are coming from search engines versus AI answer engines. But that number is also, those I would say the number of AI search or clicks from AI engines is increasing comparatively over time, but it's still kind of a small small percentage. But instead of rankings, where brands are looking to things like what is their share of voice within these AI engines. Now, the challenge in measuring that is in the past, it was, again, like I said, it's kind of easy to understand, like, how do I rank for all of these keywords? Personalization and localization always happened at a search from a search engine perspective. We all could search for, say, I think the classic one is always like, hey, pizza near me. We're all going to get very different results for that. But it was always also very clear that there was local intent when somebody was doing that. When people were searching for generic terms like running shoes, the rankings were pretty consistent. There was some personalization and localization that happened, but it was pretty easy, so to speak, to get an understanding of where you were, where you showed up in the search results. The challenge with, say, ChatGPT or any of these other LLMs is that all of us on this call right now can go ask ChatGPT the exact same question, and we are all going to get vastly different answers because of the way in which the LLMs are geared to work. They're all geared to work to answer based on everything that it knows specifically, about us. And she did this experiment not long ago where there was a number of us in a room. We were all on the same Wi-Fi, same location, same IPs, same everything, and we all got very different answers. That becomes a challenge for brands when they are trying to measure because it's so hard to be able to simulate all of the different answers that they might be getting. Now, when we look at this, we think of AI, though. Right now, I think a lot of brands are thinking of AI as just a new avenue for searching. Okay, I used to care about where I show up in Google. Now I need to care about where I search or where I show up in ChatGPT. And while that is true, right now, February 10th, 2026, what we see is that AI is really becoming just another customer. And in most cases, it will become the biggest customer for a lot of brands, which is also something that we saw in the space 20 years ago with search, where Google became the biggest customer for a lot of brands, and making sure that Google was able to access all of the content on a website was something that most enterprise brands have been trying to do with their SEO strategies for the for the last 20 years. But we're seeing that with AI, and it's not just a new search engine. But in the future, what we are seeing is that there's going to be a world where agents are doing the purchase for us, agents are doing the searches. We're going to interact with our AI assistant, whichever players turn out to be the dominant ones in the space, or whichever ones everybody kind of gets used to using. And then your website needs to be accessible from an agent, because the agent might be the one that is ultimately going to be consuming the content, making recommendations, and then even doing the purchasing for you. At the same time, I think we look at the foundation of AI is really built off of the foundation of organic search, which we look at as being a database, so to speak, of human intentions. For the last 25 or so years, everybody kind of got very accustomed to, I need something, I will go to a search engine, I will put in the keyword, I will start to do my research, and then in time, I will ultimately make that purchase. all of those, intentions and all of that data is really, how it really has laid the foundation for the AI answer engines that, that we are, that we are now, kind of optimizing for, and that brands are trying to be, show or trying to become visible in. And the thing is, while everything is changing, all of this is changing, measurement is changing, how, strategies are probably changing for most brands, human intent hasn't really changed. It's really the interface that has changed. So I'm old enough to remember when search engines were also not even necessarily keyword based, but if you go way, way back, late 90s, some of you may remember, was kind of the directory age. And if you remember how Yahoo started and Yahoo got its roots, it wasn't as a search engine. It was more it was almost like the yellow pages for the internet back in the day. And you would go through and you would click, I'm searching for, there again, maybe it's running shoes. You would go through and click on shoes and then running shoes, and you'd kind of have to navigate through. That was, kind of, late 90s. Then we went into the age of searching, and that's the one that we have been living through probably for the last 20 or so years, where people got away from kind of navigating through a directory like they did 40 years ago with the yellow pages, and going into a searching age where you could type in anything and you would get a list of possibilities back. But now we are moving into the intelligence age, or the age of conversations, so to speak, where you're really interacting with ChatGPT. And I think almost everybody probably on this call, if you've used ChatGPT or Perplexity or any other LLM, your interactions with it are very, very different, right? I think back to even just yesterday alone, I was using it to say like, hey, I'm making this recipe. Here is the full recipe. I don't have X, Y, and Z. Can you give me recommendations for replacements for each, and adjust the, maybe the kind of the volume of each that is needed? You never would have went through in, Google search in the past and been able to do that. You would have had to go through each one individually. I don't have X. What are, substitutions, and go. It's just kind of one quick interaction, and I got everything that I had needed, all, in a matter of seconds. So while AI search diverges a little bit from SEO, they ultimately do have the same foundation, which is very interesting. And I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions when we are talking to brands right now. I can't tell you how many times over the last 18 months, we've heard brands say, we aren't doing SEO anymore. SEO is not the future. We are just doing AEO or GEO. The industry hasn't really kind of settled in yet on what the preferred acronym is. So you might hear a couple of different acronyms get thrown around. That said, ChatGPT and Perplexity are building a lot of the answers that they are giving you based off of search results, and we'll walk through exactly how that works. So AI builds upon traditional search, but there are pitfalls. So LLM data is inherently going to be out of date. The way in which, if you ask right now, and I think hopefully I put the slide in, maybe I'm ruining it later, but if you go in right now and ask ChatGPT, what is the training date? What is the cutoff for the data in your training data right now? The answer I got back earlier today was August of 2025. So any question that you ask ChatGPT that might require an answer that needs data from after August of 2025, its training data that it's using for its LLM is going to be out of date. So it's not going to know whether or not a brand has a particular running shoe in stock, if it's on sale, if there has been a change in price or availability, or where you can actually find it today. And I do have it coming up, so I did ruin that, but we can skip it when we get to it. And that's because AI search relies on LLMs and the models that are kind of pre-trained on static content. So that is that, like I said, that cutoff date of August of 2025. So, and from the way this kind of works, functionally, is user asks a question, LLM uses its static content to answer the question, and then it may have a limited answer due to lack of content, that it has sourced from. Again, if we go back to running shoes, maybe say August of 2025 doesn't seem that long, but every company that produces running shoes has released their new running shoes for the year already. So all of that data, would be is effectively out of date based off of just its training model. And here is the exact one where I had asked it this morning. You can see it actually tells me as of today, February 10th, my training data cutoff is August of 2025. All right. So in case anybody is now thinking, well, wait, does this mean that everything that I've been asking ChatGPT is going to be out of date and is not necessarily the most accurate? And no. So what all of these LLMs do is they use something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, for short, for when it needs data, to answer a question that is maybe more real time, or maybe something that, again, that has happened after August of, 2025. And what it does, the searcher, your consumer, asks a question. It will actually leverage search results from Google and Bing. ChatGPT, OpenAI does have a partnership with Bing. However, from what we've been able to see over the last 12 months, it looks like they are also using a lot of Google search results to be able to get a list of, or to be able to augment, those searches when they come in. So this happens. Then the LLM supplements the trained model that it has with the fresh content, and it gives a augmented answer, to the, to the end user. So keeping along the lines of running shoes, maybe it'll come back and it'll come up with a, consideration set of maybe 10 different running shoes, for you or whoever's doing the search. And as it goes through, it's going to use that real-time data to be able to pull in price, pull in availability, depending on where you might be trying to purchase that shoe from. So while traditional search relies on crawlers, or traditional search, I should say, relies on crawlers, finding your pages and then indexing them. So essentially, what had happened in the past with search engines is their crawler was always out, constantly crawling, constantly finding new content, updating its index, based off of that data. And then when we would do the interaction, it would just pull from its index and give us, what it thought was the best answer, for the end user. And this is kind of the steps of that process that, we traditionally used in search, right? The crawlers would go out. They would look for pages, and look for content across the internet to potentially include in its index. It would have to render all of the content on the page. So if there were different programming languages on the page, would require different layers of rendering. And what that just means is kind of fully seeing every word on the page. Then it would decide whether or not that content was up to its standards, and whether or not to index it and put it in its directory, so to speak. And then it would rank it based on how relevant it felt it was for different queries. And then ultimately, brands would measure how much, how they converted, after the end user, came to their site. So if we kind of break that down even further, you can see from the SEO funnel, first the content had to be found. It had to be seen and understood by a bot. Then it had to be categorized. Then it had to be shared with searchers, and then ultimately searchers had to take action to click through and convert. Driving conversions, with GEO requires all of the above with some changes. So there's the added step of pushing content to AI platforms. So again, their crawlers are working very different, like we had mentioned, where it does have that training date cutoff. So brands are trying to push content directly into the LLM versus waiting for the LLM to find it. There is a new step of ranking and summarizing, which is what's happening right now, in terms of when somebody is trying to measure how they show up in ChatGPT. And then conversions can happen on your website or within the AI platform, like we had kind of already mentioned. The hidden issue most brands are missing right now, specifically in e-commerce, I would say, is that their content, a lot of their reviews, their pricing, the inventory, et cetera, is really invisible to AI engines because bots, these new AI bots, can't see much of the critical content that search bots historically, were able to. So I mentioned, different programming languages that might be used. JavaScript is one that has been pretty widely used across the internet for a long time. When I got into search in the early 2000s, search engines couldn't handle JavaScript at all. So anything that was in JavaScript was invisible to a search engine. And then I want to say probably around maybe like 2015-ish, 14, somewhere around there, is when search engines finally started rendering JavaScript content and they were able to see it. So 15 years ago, 10 years ago, brands would try to avoid JavaScript when it came to SEO at all costs. Now, once search engines started to be able to render it, then brands really started to adopt it because there's a lot of benefits from a programming perspective and a usability perspective for an end user to be able to leverage programming languages such as such as that. The problem with it in 2026 is all of these new AI engines are not rendering JavaScript today. So if ChatGPT comes to this running shoe page and it is trying to understand the content on the page, basically this version on the left is what the AI bot is getting when it does not render JavaScript. And let me go to the next one because that actually highlights it a little bit, a little bit better. The one on the right is when the version on the right is with all of the content being rendered and fully executed and seen by, whether it's a search bot or or an end user. And a lot of times what we see is things like price, availability, reviews, maybe even in some cases, some of the descriptive content for a product page is all requires JavaScript to be rendered by a bot for it to be seen. And right now, AI bots are just missing a lot of that critical information on all of these pages. And this is actually something that we have a solution for that we are helping a lot of our clients, kind of solve for, where they don't actually have to change their entire website. They don't have to rebuild it. They don't have to get rid of JavaScript. We are actually able to render it for them, and then we serve it to the AI bots on their behalf, so they can kind of have the best of both worlds, where they keep the user or they keep the usability of their website kind of exactly how they want it, and then we just make sure the bots can see all of their content. But it is a real problem for a lot of brands, and again, there's been a number of rooms I've been in where you might have an executive like, "Why I can't find my product when I ask ChatGPT a specific question." And what's been really kind of easy to kind of hammer this home is it's pretty easy to just go into Chrome, turn off JavaScript, and then reload the page. And if you just tell somebody, "Well, turn off JavaScript and reload the page," that's what an AI bot is getting when it's trying to understand your product. It starts to really kind of shine a light on it. And client-side JavaScript is used by 98.9% of all websites on the internet. So there is a lot, like I said, there's a lot of that content that AI bots are missing, right now. And I think if you think of the way in which an LLM kind of wants to interact, with a web page, it really wants to understand not just, that it's a running shoe available in various sizes at a various price. It wants to understand, is this good for somebody who's going to be doing long distance running or sprinting? Is it good for a novice or a beginner? And it's trying to understand all of those different contextual relationships between, the ultimate, the ultimate purpose that it serves and what people might be searching for. And a lot of that content actually that it uses and that it really kind of craves lives in product reviews, which we see in a number of cases, like I said, kind of lives within JavaScript, which makes it ultimately invisible to those AI bots today. So AI can be, the barrier, or it could be, kind of a bridge to, to a brand's audience. Like I said, right now, if brands aren't doing anything, it is definitely, they are missing out on having their products be shown in the in the LLMs. However, if they are addressing it, it is an opportunity right now for them to kind of get a leg up on most of their competitors. And then measuring measuring, I mentioned how much measurement has kind of changed, in the past. I think in the past, a lot of brands were thinking about rankings, clicks, conversions, right? All of that was very easy to measure. Everybody, almost every large company has either Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, one of those two. They're very easy to set up, very easy to get that data, and they have years, if not decades at least, of this point of data to be able to compare to. That has really changed with LLMs because, like I said, you might ask 30 questions in one single interaction without ever going to a .com or clicking. So there's a lot of different tools. This is just our tool that we have launched to help our customers understand how they're showing up, so they're able to actually enter in the what types of prompts or what types of questions brands are going to be asking to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI Mode, all the different engines. And then we're giving it an answer or showing it what kind of answers are for showing up. So for again, GEO, AEO, again, a lot of different acronyms for it right now. There's things that you might hear like, so brands are trying to cover model coverage or just how many different engines they are looking to kind of track in journey coverage in terms of things like at different stages of the buyer journey, how are they showing up? This is something, again, I would say intent mapping is something that clients have asked us about much more in the last 2 years than they had in the previous 10. And there's all these new metrics that have come up, such as, they might hear people say citation share or sentiment mix. These are all different ways of measuring. Citations is really just how many times are you showing up in an answer in ChatGPT. That is measurable. It's a little bit challenging, but it lets a brand know how many times have they actually appeared in an answer for a consumer when it has asked a different question to ChatGPT. And I think the other one that brands are really starting to become interested in is understanding when they are showing up in an answer, are they showing up positively or negatively? Because again, in the past, brands kind of just cared like, okay, I rank number 7 for running shoes. I want to rank higher, but at least I'm on page 1. Now, however, they want to know, well, like, okay, my running shoes are showing up in answers, but is ChatGPT saying, these are good running shoes? Or are they saying it's not good? Are they not good running shoes? Or is the way in which they're being mentioned in an answer, positively or negatively influencing, a consumer's buying decision? These are all new questions that are being asked. I will say the measurement of this right now is very tricky. It is very challenging. It's very directional, given all those challenges I'd kind of mentioned. In the past, if we can all ask it the exact same question and get very, very different, very different answers. But these are all things and ways in which brands are really starting to adapt, and things that they are looking to measure. I think 2026 is going to be a very difficult year for marketers in general because we are starting to see that shift of fewer clicks, more searches. And when a lot of brands are going to be looking at their data, it's going to be really hard to understand ultimately, are they really doing good, relative to where they were a year ago when clicks keep dwindling. And that is just it's going to be a challenge until things start to stabilize. I don't think they will stabilize in 2026. I think, if you think back to even how long it took for people to really truly embrace e-commerce, for anybody on the line old enough to remember that. I still remember when people said, I'm never going to put my credit card into a .com. I'm just going to find the product online and then I'll go to the store and buy it. That took a good bit of time. I don't think it's going to take as long for folks to really start to adapt this new way of searching and buying. But it's going to be very much a kind of a transition year. I mean, 25 was already a transition year for a lot of brands. I think 2024 was probably the year of hype with all of AI search, and that was where all of a sudden brands started saying things like, "Oh well, do we even need to invest in SEO anymore? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should do this." It led to a lot of inaction in 2024. I think in 2025, we started to see a lot of brands start to take action. And then we started to see the data really start to shift where a lot of the predictions kind of had said it had. maybe not as fast. I know I remember Gartner, I think it was, it said that by 2026, 25% of clicks from search engines would migrate to LLMs. We haven't seen it nearly that much. We did a look at our data a few months back, maybe like 2 months ago, and I think it was like 95 and 5%. So it wasn't a full 25. But it started the year at like 1% for AI answer engines. So that was a pretty sizable increase. And I think I actually just covered off on most of my final thoughts in that slide. But I think, like I said, I think in 2026, what we're going to see is a lot of brands are going to be prioritizing bot and agent, experience more so than maybe, user experience when it comes to, how, their search strategies, making sure all of their content can be found by AI bots. Is going to be critical. If they do that, it's basically going to cover off on all of these search engines as well, because the AI bots are much less sophisticated than the search bots today. But they're also going to be taking a closer look, I think, at those infrastructure bills as they come in, because AI bots are just consuming so much more content than they are producing conversions right now. That is creating, like I said, a real struggle for a lot of brands. I'd say specifically ones who are maybe like, kind of like those middle tier enterprise or maybe even mid-market, like smaller brands where, they don't have necessarily, say, the same servers as, say, a large enterprise company. Those are the ones that are going to have some kind of difficult decisions to make, throughout the year. But at the same time, I think it's going to create a lot of fun in the industry because it is, things are changing just so rapidly that, the conversations I know that we're going to be having with our customers in January of next year are going to be very, very different than the ones that we are having, this year alone. We also have released a white paper, by the way, so with which you can get via the QR code here. It's also available on our website. But we did a whole AI search white paper, I want to say towards maybe the middle of 25, with a lot of great information on it. But with that, I think the goal was actually to have this be about 45 minutes with time for Q&A. So I think we kind of hit it right on the time.
I think that's right. Thank you. That's fantastic. I really enjoyed that, and I took a lot of notes. So everybody, feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the chat. And while you're thinking about what you want to ask, I have a few that occurred to me over the course of the conversation. So just grab my notes here. I think I'll start with kind of where you ended in terms of the infrastructure costs and the evaluation of the efficiency and efficacy, I guess, of being found in an AI search for these companies.
Mhm.
So, what are the chances that the zero-click kind of pushback and keeps content providers, I'll call them, I'll kind of abstract it up a little bit, from deciding that there are other approaches that they might want to take. Any thoughts on that, or is it just too early to even know?
No, I mean, I would say I think like specifically content providers. So we work with a lot of e-commerce brands. We work with a lot of larger publishers. I think, and not necessarily, we don't work with as many as the mid-tier ones, maybe like a smaller, which publishing in general has been a challenge for the last few years, in terms of them staying profitable. Everybody probably saw the Washington Post news, was that a week or so ago? And, you think of Washington Post as a pretty big brand, and if they're kind of struggling, they just kind of highlights just how much more of a challenge it is for, say, even smaller publishers. But I mean, we have seen a lot of the publishing clients that we do work with just say, we're going to block OpenAI altogether, and we're not even going to let our data be included in their trading model, because that is that's their bread and butter. And then from their perspective, it's not as large of a risk, I think, as much as it is, say, from an e-commerce space. It's been much more rare for us to hear an e-commerce customer say we're just going to block them from crawling our products, because ultimately they want, as long as they get the conversion, in some cases, it doesn't really matter to them if it took 7 clicks to their website, or one, other than it's going to create for some difficult, measurement and, and things like that along the way for them to know. But ultimately, as long as their revenue is increasing, they are generally, kind of okay with the bots accessing the content. Yeah, but the content providers are much more sensitive to that. We have a number of those who, like I said, who've just blocked the OpenAI and other LLMs, completely, because if the answer takes place all within ChatGPT, if it's research based, they're not really getting too much, out in return for it, right now, which is probably going to just be something though that OpenAI, I'm assuming, will probably need to tackle at some point, because if enough brands start to block them, then their LLM isn't going to be as up to date, and then that'll be, something that that they need to solve for.
Okay, let's see. Any questions yet? I will keep going down my list. Let's see. Um, Let me ask about personalization,
Mhm.
because I personally haven't had a lot of time to look into the details of how that's working and what's happening there.
Yep.
So, could you talk a little bit about the concept of personalization is with the large language models? Is there any difference across any of them? How
Oh yeah.
are settings starting to become available to work with
Yep.
them? Are there things going on that we can control, not control,
Yep.
privacy issues, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, I mean, for the most part, with the LLMs and ChatGPT specifically, it's learning from every single interaction that you have with it today, and it is using all of that to inform, the answers that it is giving you.
Where's it
Moving,
that stuff?
moving forward.
Is it from search? Is it from search history and browser? Is it reading the
It's from your
browsers?
interactions with it. So like every time you
Interactions
ask it a
with it?
question and it's learning from you. So like a really good way to understand like what does ChatGPT know with you? You can actually just go in and be like, there's a fun one that was going around, I know our office, and it said, I think the prompt was something like, based on everything that you know about me and all of our interactions, create a caricature of me, of what you think I look like, on a day-to-day basis at work. And for me, given my bio that we joked about in the beginning, it literally had me sitting in an office, laptop or, in front of me. It had all sorts of charts and graphs in the screen, and a whole bunch of Notre Dame football paraphernalia, behind me on the walls, because it knew based off of searches that I'm a Notre Dame football fan. But you could just ask it like, hey, based on everything you know about me, what would you recommend? Yep. And that's just kind of, I would say, like a good one, but literally everything that you are putting into it, it is learning from, and it is using that to inform your, kind of the future answers. So I could even tell you, like, I ask it a ton of things about my kids, because I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and like, most dads with a 2 and a 4-year-old don't really know what the heck I'm doing most days. So I will ask it a bunch of questions, right? It's like, do I need to call the doctor for this? Like before I bother the doctor, it's kind of become the first line of defense in a lot of cases for things like that. But I will ask it then a question, 2 weeks later, and it'll be like, well, as a dad with 2 kids, this recipe might not be great for kids, but here's a way to tailor it to, so that your kids might like it as well.
And just to follow up with one technical, is it tracking you by? Does it give you an ID, or if you're not logged
Usually
in?
you're logged
Or
in. Like most people are, they are logged in to be able to to kind of get the answers. I'm not even sure. It's been so long actually since I've tried to ask it anything not logged in, if you can even ask it anything without having a user account anymore.
you don't need user accounts for most of them
Gotcha.
right now.
Yeah.
No, I'm not logged into any of them when I'm
Mhm.
using them. So I'm
It'd be
curious
an
about that.
interesting experiment then to ask, what does it know, about you
Yeah,
based off your search history, to understand how much it's tracking, based
yeah,
off just cookies and things of that nature then.
yeah. Super. I'm going to do that. Okay, we have a couple of questions, and one is, can you talk a bit more about the metrics that impact how AI bots would rank content? Are those
Mhm.
metrics qualitative, How well does the summary of an article match, and in quantitative, this article has more citations and views.
Yeah, I would say, kind of, and this, I'd say one of the biggest questions a lot of brands are asking right now is like exactly, what are all the different metrics? And I think you're right along the line. Citation, how many times, a brand is cited is definitely one. The ChatGPT specifically tends to really seek third party, validation. So it'll actually reference Reddit a lot and a lot of user generated content websites to really kind of validate the claims that brands are making, say, about their products. So user reviews are really important as well because it is, verified user reviews are, coming from, an actual consumer, and they are not just kind of marketing speak that is coming, coming out. But I think what's also interesting in terms of how is it determining, kind of the rankings, I think the part that a lot of brands right now are still missing is that to even be in the consideration set, you kind of have to be on the first page of search results for ChatGPT to even know that you exist if it is something, like I said, that is new. So a lot of it builds on the foundation from what helps rank in from a traditional search perspective, since that is kind of the basis right now. And until they have their own search engines, will probably continue to be just based off of the nature of how an LLM works. But then from there, there's a lot of other, I would say, other ways, like once it knows about your content, like structured data is a term that you'll hear a lot. And that's a way for you to kind of feed it more information, outside of just kind of having it, know every single word, on the page. So you're seeing a lot of in the term in the SEO space, brands are really focused right now on introducing as much structured data to all of their pages as possible to kind of feed it as much information as you kind of possibly can. It's actually one area too. We're seeing a lot of our e-commerce brands try to optimize their traditional product feeds by augmenting it with more optimization than maybe they had in the past. Because a lot of product feeds from retailers are pretty much kind of just product. Here's the image. Here's the price. Here's the availability. Here is our marketing approved product description that probably went through 14 rounds of marketing revisions and legal revisions and is exactly how we want to mention it. But that doesn't necessarily help an LLM understand the purposes that exact product is serving.
I have two follow-up questions
Yep.
to that, and one is when you said earlier that that providers that your customers were pushing content to the LLMs, and it was that specific. Was that the structured data that you're talking about? In what ways are they doing that? And then the second one is this third-party authority building,
Mhm.
um, and how authority is evaluated before using content into the answers is another
Gotcha.
question that I've been wondering about.
Yes, so a lot of it is within like a lot of the structured data that it's pushing or that it has on its pages, a lot of feeds that it could push in. The LLMs are accepting more feeds because the LLMs just want to consume content. They don't necessarily want to crawl the web the way that a traditional search engine has. So whether it be traditional product feeds, there's ways to actually push content directly, into Bing's index actually, which then
Yes,
it
right.
can leverage. So
Hmm.
that's another way in which another thing that we have seen our brands, focus. And I think on the third party validation, it's funny when I got into search again in the early 2000s, and one of the big things that became popular maybe in like the late 2000s, like 2010, was this whole idea of link building. And digital PR became real big, real big back then, and getting your brand mentioned on third-party blogs and things like that. And then Google kind of tried to crack down on that because Google didn't like how easy it was to somewhat manipulate the rankings, so to speak, of like, okay, if you got enough links pointing to your site from all these different third-party sites, it would, kind of inflate the rankings. And they just said like they started to devalue, linking over the years. And a lot of brands, as Google said that, a lot of brands stopped doing it, as much. Even things like when you would pay for a product review for, a blogger for your product, like Google put in place rules that said none of those links should count towards our ranking algorithm. Sure, you paid them to talk about your running shoe, but because you paid for it, there were certain criteria that it said certain attributes that were supposed to be put on all of the links pointed to your site when it was something along those lines, or it had to say sponsored content, paid post. There was a lot of disclosure that needed to kind of to take place. LLMs are a little, again, less sophisticated, so you're seeing a lot of brands go back to a lot of the outreach kind of efforts that they had done in the past, and putting more of an emphasis on getting their brand mentioned on third party websites, because the LLMs are using that then to influence how they're ranking products within their answers.
Okay, and then as far as the forums and communities go, do those have default authority, or
Sorry, say again.
the communities like Reddit
Yep.
and some of the socials, do those have default authority, or
Yeah,
what's
Reddit
happening
seems
there?
right now to have probably more authority than it should, given the nature of it.
Yeah,
But that's the kind of content that they're trying to use to kind of validate, they get some of the claims brands make, and use that to understand how people are actually using different products.
yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's it for the for time for questions, because I just want to wrap up a little bit. I also want to ask Frank, when we finish the recording, if you would just stay with me for one moment after I close the meeting down. That would be great. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to share my screen once more to um, show you. First of all, a thank you for coming to this session today, and I want to thank Frank. It was super informative, and I really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it, and I'm sure everybody on the call did. I want to share with the participants the Botify website, Botify.com. This is what it looks like. The branding is beautiful. I really am impressed with it, with the way it looks, and really nice. But what I want to point out is up here in the resources section, we have there's a blog, and there's this section here called Search Insights that I have found to be very,
Mm.
very valuable and helpful, where you find things like information about AI and search, and there are white papers and things like that about how AI powered search works, and then additional resources on learning more about search. And Frank did share with us that the information on that white paper as well, which I think there's a link somewhere in this
Yep.
world of resources that you can register or track down that white paper as well. I've actually seen that, although I haven't completely read all of it, but I was able to snag it. So, having said that, I think that's it. We had one more thing in the chat. Oh, a thank you from somebody. So that's it for our participants. I'll stop sharing my screen. I'm going to keep the meeting open just so that I can have a moment to chat with Frank for a minute. And the rest of you guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all.